Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
My father gave me a small loan of $1 million.
I built a company that's worth more than $10 billion, okay? With $1 million loan.
Turns out it was not $1 million, but the equivalent today of $413 million the president received from his father's real estate empire over the years, according to an exhaustive investigation by the New York Times. The paper says much of this money came to Mr. Trump because he helped his parents dodge taxes. He and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents, with records indicating Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. Tax experts describe what they think could be a pattern of deception and obfuscation.
I borrowed very little money from my father. What I did borrow, and the thing that really helped me with my father, was his knowledge.
Fred Trump was enormously wealthy. He found innovative ways to begin moving that money to his children in ways that either outright evaded or in some cases appeared to have broke tax laws.
The report says as a toddler, Donald Trump was earning more than many adults, $200,000 a year from his father Fred's businesses. He was a millionaire by age 8 and continued receiving money well into adulthood. But he and his family avoided big tax hits on much of it via questionable schemes, according to the Times. The paper calls the most overt fraud a company created by the Trumps in the early 90s, All County Building Supply, that siphoned millions of dollars from Fred Trump's empire by simply marking up purchases already made by his employees. The Times based its reporting on tens of thousands of pages of financial records, like bank statements and tax returns, documents NBC News has not independently seen or reviewed. The White House now suggesting the Times owes President Trump an apology. In a statement, the press secretary says Fred Trump has been gone for nearly 20 years, and it's sad to witness this misleading attack against the Trump family by the failing New York Times. Many decades ago, the IRS reviewed and signed off on these transactions. The president's attorney, Charles Harder, says the allegations of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false and highly defamatory.
Deny, deny, deny. All right, everybody. Gotta love these newspapers. This is why I always tell you, you have to read a newspaper. Yeah, everybody goes, how do you know what you know? How do you do what you do? I read a newspaper. In fact, I read more than one, but you don't have to. You can only read a newspaper, just any one, and I honestly don't care which one you read. You could read USA Today. You could read the New York Times. You could read the Washington Post. You could read the Wall Street Journal. I don't care which newspaper you read. Just read one. This is the most amazing investigative journalism I have seen come down the pike since pretty much Iran-Contra. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It was 3 reporters, David Barstow, Russ Butner, I'll say Butner because that's kind of like my last name, my real one, and Suzanne Craig. I mean, these 3 people got curious, got access to, one of the relatives had a box of financial documents stashed in the attic or in their house somewhere. And these 3 reporters from the New York Times asked if they could go through these documents, 100,000 pages of Fred Trump's tax returns, Fred Trump, probably, ledgers and all this. And just remember this, in the Mueller investigation, you got your Weisselberg, you got your Heisenberg. You got that guy cooperating. So you're going to get more information about the scam and the sham and the con and the farce and the 3-ring circus that is, Donald Trump. I mean, he is a liar. He has always presented himself as somebody who only borrowed a small amount. And I mean, we were choking on the fact that for him, a small amount was $1 million. Well, now you know why for him, $1 million was a small amount. because he apparently, by age 3, was earning $200,000 a year. And by the time he was 8, he was a millionaire. So this is the sickest thing ever. His father was funneling millions and millions and millions of dollars to him. I know everybody remembers the story. Remember, we made so much fun of Donald Trump because he is the only person I ever knew who ran a casino where the house didn't win. I mean, how bad, how stupid do you have to be, right? To overspend and not be, I mean, it was just a sick thing. Well, it turns out that his father, you remember there was one story we got, just one story, where his dad sent his bookkeeper into the Castle Casino, Trump's casino in Atlantic City, right? And he went in there with a check for $3.5 million. And he exchanged the check for $3.5 million worth of casino chips, but he never gambled them. So that was illegal. And they were fined by the Gaming Commission in Atlantic City a big whopping $67,000 for a $3.5 million infusion of illegal cash because Donald Trump was facing a debt payment of $18 million. And he didn't have it because he kept blowing every business this man ever set up. He couldn't sell vodka in freaking Russia, for God's sake. Couldn't sell steaks. Couldn't sell water. Couldn't sell ice cubes in hell. This man spent all his time in his early years pretending to be either John Miller or John Barron, and it was really him, calling up the tabloids, projecting this, glamorous, sort of, how many models were lining up to date him and which actresses were pursuing him. And yeah, he did Madonna and all these celebrities he was hanging out with. And, he was trying to present an image of, a self-made, young, beautiful, entrepreneur. And really all he was he's another entitled prick. That's all he is. Inheriting all this money. And he presented himself as this all-knowing, all-powerful business guy who took no help from daddy. No help.
My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. I came into Manhattan, and I had to pay him back, and I had to pay him back with interest. I started with $1 million loan. I built a $10 billion company. My father gave me a very small loan in 1975, and I built it into a company that's worth many, many billions of dollars. I built that into a massive empire, and I paid my father back that loan.
He never paid his father back any loan, ever. And this is part of the problem of, avoiding gift taxes, because his father would make loans to him and write off the loans, right? And Donald Trump would never pay them back. All right, I'm going to go through this real simple so you know what was in this unbelievable. This was 42 pages worth of reporting. They worked on this report for over a year. The documents that they had access to, some of them were public documents, like building documents and things where they went and asked for, rent stabilized buildings in New York to have the rent increase because the costs to them were rising faster than they predicted. That was part of a scam. And they played it two ways because these men are, the whole family. It's a family of rats. It's a family of money launderers. It's a family of tax cheats. It's a family of scam artists. It's a family of fraud. And Donald Trump's entire persona of a self-made businessman is now debunked. Completely mythical, completely fantastical and false. Just like everything about Donald Trump. He is a con man, all right? So the investigation found that Donald Trump received the equivalent of $413 million from his father in dubious tax schemes that he participated in the 90s, including instances of outright fraud. The all-county business that they set up, that was the one that Suzanne Craig, she was on Twitter last night, guiding us through the reporting, which was brilliant, and I tweeted it out so that you could follow her thread. She was saying pay special attention to all county supplies. She was guiding you through so that you would have an idea of what was important in these 42 pages of reporting. It was just an amazing report. Anyway, so apparently Donald Trump's parents managed to transfer to Donald Trump and his brother and sister, who sits on a court, She sits next to, what's his name, Hardiman, who was she recommended for the Supreme, but they picked a sex offender, Kavanaugh. But anyway, the family, the Trump Sr. was able to transfer $1 billion to his children, which would have produced a tax bill upon his death of $550 million. But instead, they pay, because it was 55%. It was a 55% tax on gifts and inheritances. This is why Donald Trump made sure, he repealed the death tax, right? Because they had to commit fraud in order to get around it. What they ended up paying, not 55%, not 50, not 40, not 30, not 25, not 20, not 18, not 15, not 13, 5. They paid 5%. 5%. All right, so there's that. And then, there's more than that. There were all kinds of exploitations of, and some of them were deceptive. Others were just confusing, the tax auditors and the IRS. Some of them were, legal tax avoidance, and some of them were illegal tax evasion. But there were, what's really amazing is how they always, when they argue about we need tax reform, yeah, we really do. And the reason why is because when they show you the tax code and how many pages it is, you know why it looks like that? It looks like that because lobbyists lobby on behalf of clients like Fred Trump, on behalf of clients like Donald Trump, on behalf of clients like GE, on behalf of clients that, just don't want to pay any taxes. This is how you get billion-dollar corporations with zero tax burden, because there are so many legal tax avoidance schemes written in to our tax code. Now, when you get a W-2, if you work for somebody, you're going to get a W-2. If you work for yourself, if you're a boss, you get a K-1. And if you're, a contractor, you're going to get a 1099. There's very little chance for you to cheat on your taxes, because the 1099 is going to say how much you were paid. A K-1 is going to show how much your company took in. And a W-2 is going to show exactly what your employer paid you and what they withheld. So there's very little chance for you to cheat. So why is the tax code so huge? Because lobbyists lobby on behalf of the very wealthy and the very well-connected and giant corporate interests to put legal tax avoidance schemes into the tax code. I know this because, Howard was a lobbyist for 37 years. And his favorite thing to lobby on was the tax code. And they still managed to violate the law, this family. That's the point. They took advantage of every legal thing, but then they also, they also found things that were considered tax fraud to do. So pretty much what you have is the self-made man totally dependent on daddy for his entire life, okay? Age 3, his dad was already paying him like an employee, $200,000 a year. By 8 years old, the kid's a millionaire. In his 40s and 50s, his dad was paying him $5 million a year. And then when Donald Trump started blowing the money on stupid business deals, constantly failing, constantly going broke, everything he touched went bust. It's like Rick Wilson's book, Everything Donald Trump Touches Dies. Fred Trump started bailing out his son. He bailed out the Trump Shuttle, the Plaza Hotel, the Atlantic City casinos, through legal and illegal ways. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.